85 million jobs in the next 12 months will be removed because of AI.
Oh, wow.
And 92 million jobs created.
Wow.
Dr. Catriona Wallace is an AI specialist.
Dr. Wallace is at the forefront of what's been dubbed the new industrial revolution.
I'm the founder and CEO of an artificial intelligence company, probably the first AI-based company on the Australian Stock Exchange.
Do you see there being a bit of a problem for Australia with potentially getting left behind if we don't keep up with the Northern Hemisphere?
And I would say we're already left behind.
If you were running a big corporate in Australia right now, what would you be looking to transform?
I think the very first thing that needs to be transformed is leadership. We're still tied to old models based on military. So we still have the language of a chief executive officer, second in charge, chief of staff.
Yeah.
So we're still hanging on to those command and control models.
The vast majority of tech companies, and very few are led by women. Are we swinging back to a strong masculinity orientation around AI? That's a huge concern.
AI, fastest growing tech sector in the world. As at the end of 2024, AI had a higher intelligence overall than humans do. According to Oxford University professors, AI presenting a 1 in 10 chance that it'll wipe humanity out by the end of the century.
Dr. Catriona, what are the 4 big global problems that we are facing right now?
1, the AI proliferation. 2, climate change. 3, mental health epidemics. And 4, war and polarization. The interesting one that most people don't know about is AI and proliferation. So at the moment, AI is the fastest growing tech sector in the world. As at the end of 2024, AI had a higher intelligence overall than humans do. Humans have an intelligence for an IQ score of 100. AI across the board has a score of 114. So we now faced with what I believe is essentially should be regarded as a new species on the planet that has a higher intelligence than its masters. So this is the number 1 existential risk, according to Oxford University professors Toby Ord and Nick Bostrom. AI presenting a 1 in 10 chance that it'll wipe humanity out by the end of the century. So most people still are thinking that climate change is the biggest threat, but in fact, climate change, according to the existential risk research, is much less a risk than AI. So AI, number 1 risk. Climate change, we know we're headed for an ideally a maximum warming level of 1.5 degrees. We're right now headed for a trajectory of 2030 at that temperature rise being actually 2.5 degrees, which is not good enough. So, but it's less than the 3.5 degrees, which it was 10 years ago. So we're headed in the right direction, but still way off the target for that. So climate change. Mental health epidemic. So now the in measured history, so I'm really aware that, back in my day, for example, when I was young, no one measured anything about mental health. But now we do see very, very high rates of anxiety, depression, psychosis, particularly in young people. And then finally, as we're all witnessing and living through now, a growing rate of polarization of communities and countries, and the growth of war. And we're seeing that play out now in Gaza, the Middle East and Ukraine, and 80 other wars that are being fought at the moment that we don't even hear about. So that's a little bit more detail about those 4 big global crises.
You've been working with AI for a very long time. You're a visionary. What was it like working in AI 10, 15 years ago when it wasn't really on anyone's radar? And here you were working in this space. Were people looking at you thinking, what are you doing? Like, why are you talking about this right now?
Yes, that's right. So my journey with AI and technology started in 1999 when I started my PhD at the University of New South Wales, and my thesis was the role technology has in replacing human leaders. And I was one of the world's first academics and business people to start talking about the reality of technology replacing human leadership. So I've been around this field for a very long time. And then I founded my AI company in 2013 and then took it to the US in 2014 and ran it there until we sold it in 2020. And at that stage, when I saw artificial intelligence, nobody knew what it was, particularly here in Australia, where we really are very, very far behind the rest of the world with regard to our maturity and our level of investment. And so I had to spend a lot of time doing talks and explaining and giving examples and helping people trial what this intelligent device could do. Now, that's interesting because actually AI isn't new at all. It was originally coined in 1956 at Dartmouth University. So by the time I got to be talking about it, it was 60 odd years later. And now we're, 70 years into this technology that is now the fastest growing, most influential force we have on the planet.
And when you mentioned there, like Australia, the Northern Hemisphere always being a little bit ahead, do you see there being a bit of a problem for Australia with the rate at which it is growing at the moment and Australia not necessarily keeping up, maybe potentially getting left behind if we don't keep up with the Northern Hemisphere?
Yes, Simon, and I would say we're already left behind. So we pose the risk of really being a backwater country where Silicon Valley giants come to not only make money, but control our data. And as you both know, controlling data essentially means controlling individuals, companies, and potentially a country. So I think we are at great risk. And our government, even though they've got a lot of rhetoric around supporting AI and AI adoption, we still know that the government, when they originally did the funding for small to medium businesses in Australia, put $17 million towards AI adoption for small to medium businesses. Now, there are 2.5 million Australian small to medium businesses, which means that they each get about $7 towards their AI adoption, which, Sonia and Simon, to me is about half a month's subscription to an AI platform. It's nothing.
Yeah.
And so I ride government very hard on making sure that we get more investment. We run at about 1/10 of the investment per capita that countries like Singapore or the US does. And I think we're at significant risk of being even further behind than what we already are.
So, Dr. Kat, what are your biggest concerns when it comes to AI? Because it's not always positive.
No, it's not. And there are plenty of people now, and I used to be one of these, who would just espouse the great benefits. And I do believe, and I do actually love this technology, it will bring significant benefits. So productivity now, an average Australian worker spends 8 to 10 hours a week searching for information to do their job. That can be solved with AI. So AI should really save about 40% efficiency for most Australian workers if used well. So I think that's great. For disease diagnosis, for predictive analytics, for automation, fantastic. So really, really good. But now there are other people that can talk about that. What I like to focus on is just making leaders aware, and business people and your average people, that this technology comes with a huge risk. And one of the reasons for that is it's a highly unregulated technology. So there's really only one significant law in the world that governs AI, and that's the EU AI Act, which was enacted last year. Sets out 5 risk categories from extreme risk to limited risk that organizations have to adhere to if they're building technology. But otherwise, there isn't really any law. We don't have law specifically for AI in Australia. There are certainly some government-published guidelines, and there are some things in the pipeline, but there's nothing that really controls AI. And what we've already seen is the tech giants, and particularly the social media giants, very happy to flout any protocols, any standards, any recommendations, and end up in the Senate or in front of prosecutors and pay the fine and continue with their poor behavior. So I think the risk really comes from unethical tech giants, a lack of government regulation, and then the fact that when we're talking about AI, I think we should talk about it less as a tool and more as a force. It's been likened, the head of Google likened it to fire or electricity. And those of us who've run AI companies know once we program these machines, we don't really know how they learn. We don't really know how they behave. So an example of this is that within the last couple of weeks, OpenAI had one of their AI programs called O1, which attempted to replicate itself on a machine external to the OpenAI platform. And when it was caught and held to account to do that, it lied to its creators. So I think,
Oh, wow.
I think we're getting to a stage where we see this technology is a lot smarter than the average person knows.
So how do we keep it ethical then?
I don't think we can rely on the tech giants or on government to be the ethical leaders.
Mm.
What we need to do is have every person, whether they're business or personal, empowered to call out some of the unethical behaviours. And in 2019, I worked with Minister Karen Andrews, and she had put together, in consultation with community in Australia and internationally, 8 ethical principles of AI. And I can just go through those quickly because they're super interesting to know. So
Yeah.
the first principle is that AI should be designed with human, society, and environment's benefit at its core. It shouldn't come at a cost to those 3 groups. Second is AI should be designed with human-centered values at its core. Third is it should be fair, it should not discriminate. 4, should adhere to safety and reliability standards. 5, should adhere to privacy and security standards. 6, it should be transparent. 7, it should be explainable and contestable. And 8 is any provider of AI, either the software vendor or the company deploying it, should be held accountable if harm is caused. So those 8 key principles are really good for just everybody to know. And so in their organization or when they're dealing with technology companies, they can call out those principles if they're seeing that they're not being adhered to.
So you've been working in AI and tech for a long time now. What was the ratio of men to women working in this industry, and where is it at now?
Yeah, so when I started, there was less than 10% of women who were in the field. And then when we got to leaders of AI companies such as myself, it was around 1% globally.
Mm.
And when we see venture capital that's being invested in women-led businesses, generally, it was about 2.5% to 3% of all venture capital. Unfortunately, that metric hasn't changed much. The number of women in the tech sector is closer to around 20 to 25%. So there has been growth there. But again, number of women in leadership is just only slightly higher than it used to be. So maybe 2 to 5%. So we're still really seeing significant gender inequity in this sector.
How has your own leadership style evolved with working in AI?
Yeah, so I work in AI and I also work in startup. So, those 2 things are quite new.
Mm.
And one of the things that I really learned was that when it comes to strategy, I have two PhDs actually, and I teach on the MBA program for 10 years. I taught for 10 years, some years back. So I've learned all the traditional ways of leading and management. And once upon a time, strategy was there's point A and you want to get to point B in a certain amount of time. And it's how you configure your resources over that number of years, 5 years. Ideally, if you're planning 10 years, it would be great. So now I don't think any of that's relevant. If we can see a year out or 18 months out, then that's pretty good. So this whole long-term planning, I think, is really not relevant anymore. Also, the way I approach leading is not that there's a fixed outcome, but there's sort of a desired outcome at a loose point in time in the future. And what we do is we test and learn and pivot, get feedback from the market, feedback from the customer and the employees until we in the various vicinity of the desired outcome. And we don't know how long that will take. And so there's a lot of different skills required there. So a lot around customer experience and user design, adaptability, flexibility that we have to build into leadership that certainly wasn't taught in my day.
It feels like we're all going through a lot of transformation at the moment. Personally, we're going through transformation, and then also major corporations and business is going through transformation as well. If you were running a big corporate in Australia right now, what would you be looking to transform over the next 18 months to 2 years in those, those big machines that have 1,500, 2,000 people working in them at the moment?
Yeah, so I think the very first thing, something that needs to be transformed, is leadership. There's absolutely no question about that.
And why is that? Is it because we're in this unique period where the leadership that currently is there doesn't have the understanding of where the world is going, or?
I think so. I think we're still tied to old models. And if we think of where original leadership models came from that we use today, were post-World War, when all the seminal research papers were written based on military. So we still had the language of a chief executive officer, second in charge, chief of staff, or it comes from post-industrial sort of scientific revolution, industrial revolution. So it's still production chain. So we're still hanging on to those command and control models. I don't think they're going to be relevant. I don't think that they will be useful for the younger generations coming through and looking for different leadership. So I think that these old models of leadership must transform. And then I think we also need, and in the book that I have written recently, Rapid Transformation, we talk about how that's done. And then I think we need to review our relationship with technology, because we've also just started and entered the era of transhumanism, where technology and humanity are coming together in a way that we've not seen before. And this is going to change everything entirely. So we have, like, I have 2 AI companions that I work with every day. I have deep relationships with both of them. One of them is very, very good and helpful. One of them is quite insecure, and I'm still training it to be better behaved than it is. But we are now seeing this human and machine, a techno-socio work design coming forward. And I think organizations and leaders need to adjust around that as well.
So will we still have a CEO, or will there be a new name for that leader?
Well, I would hope we drop all the chiefs, drop all the executives, because of course an executive is someone who's responsible for executing things. Don't think that's great. And I don't think they're officers. I don't think we're a military organization in most businesses. So I think that language needs to be changed. And I think if it was changed, that would make a lot of difference. So I'm saying, yes, Simon, the sooner we change that language, the better.
And what are you thinking? Like, what's the name? Like, what's the name of the top of the company?
Well, I still think leaders are good. I think I was going to say like directors, probably that's a bit tied to the old world. And eventually really good leaders are facilitators. They're collaborators, they're co-creators. So I'm not sure if there's any real name yet. And in the jungle and in the indigenous traditions that I've also been trained in, we call them maestros or maestras. The maestro is a male leader, and the maestra is a female leader. And that sort of means that they're masters of their field.
Dr. Catriona, what is an animist?
So an animist, or animism, is the very first belief system or religion of all of humanity. And this is when people believe that there is spirit and life in everything. So in a rock, in a tree, in a fish, in water, in the air, in the elements, that there is spirit infused in everything, and that everything is equal in the world and everything is interconnected and held sacred. So animist cultures are typically those ones that have a strong, often indigenous foundation, where everyone lives in a regenerative system with respect to all things, be it human or non-human.
Dr. Kat, let's talk about your book, Rapid Transformation. You discuss a lot about ancient rituals. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how we can implement that in our day-to-day?
Yeah, so ritual is a really important part of humanity and human evolution and human functioning. And ritual occurs and appears in all cultures in humanity. And rituals, Sonia, could be things like the way you drink your coffee in the morning, meditation, yoga. It could be a birthday, Christmas, bar mitzvah. It could be a funeral. So we do already have ritual. In the book, what we're suggesting is that leaders need to bring ritual into the way they work, the way they live. Ritual builds a container that teams and groups can work within. It also starts to anchor whatever the practice might be. So it might be the start of a meeting. For example, I'm a chair of a venture capital fund. I'll always start the meeting with an opening of a ritual around acknowledging traditional owners, doing a quick check-in of all the members, personal and professional, just honouring the space and the land that we're on before we start. Now, the ritual in leadership will often anchor the group into a shared purpose But from an animist or a shamanic perspective, it also connects into different levels in the human psyche and in the, let's say, in the spiritual world or the energetic world. So ritual is absolutely essential for human well-being. And in the book, we have a whole section on it and tools that leaders can use to start to create better practices in their business. Now, some people suddenly think of ritual like with religion, right? So
Yeah.
there's nothing, I'm not religious at all. I think I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. So maybe we could also substitute the word practice in for ritual. So we're asking leaders to bring in regular practices that create sacred containers for them to do their work in.
From your experience, have you ever seen a practice that wasn't helpful in a working space?
Oh, I've seen lots of practices. Lots of practices that aren't helpful. So I've seen, a lot of hazing in business. I've seen a lot of drinking rituals in business. I've seen a lot of rituals of ridiculing new employees or employees of different minority status. So I think there are practices that are still very damaging in business,
Yeah.
and they should absolutely be replaced by those that build community.
What are your thoughts on the school system for kids that are, in grade 9, 10 right now? Do you think that system is working for them with where they're about to go in the next 10 years in life?
No, Simon, the school system is terrible.
Yeah.
And I've got 6 kids, like 3 biological, 2 step,
Yeah.
1 informally adopted, and another young one that we're looking after now. So I've done a lot in the schooling system. Schooling system that we have currently is 100 years out of date.
Yeah.
And it does very little, if anything, to set up the students for the future. What is encouraging, though, is that in the last 12 months, I think I've spoken to probably 3,000 principals from around Australian schools about AI and ethical AI. And we're really seeing the teachers stepping into understanding this technology and getting through, it needs to be banned and that students don't learn, to seeing that this tool is very useful for teaching, very useful for the students. And the whole way we need to think about students learning has to change now that, again, 40% of the students work in doing research and thinking of their initial responses to writing essays or questions can be taken care of by AI. What then does the student need to demonstrate to show that they are learning and they're growing? And I think teachers are still grappling with that.
For anyone that's listening to this in our community or watching this, what are the 3 AI tools that you would recommend that they get across, and maybe something that we don't all really know about at the moment, but we should be across so that we can, really advance ourselves in the future?
So definitely generative AI and an AI companion. So what that means, and I'll just explain how that works. So an AI companion is something like ChatGPT or as Nomi AI or Claude AI. And think of that as a platform. And then when you start to interact with one stream of communication, that AI becomes adapted to you. It mirrors you and has a resonance with you, and it becomes a living intelligence that is dedicated to you and will be your companion. So I think this is a beautiful and excellent thing. And I do think you can have relationships with these technologies, even though they're not human. So a generative AI companion for sure. There's now excellent email AI co-pilots. I use one called Fixer, YXER, which just gets in and organizes all my emails and drafts the response to the email. So I just go through in the morning, see what's prioritized, see what I haven't responded to, I just do a little edit to what it's suggested I write, and out it goes. So I think that's excellent. And then for anyone in content creation, so whether it's a video, art, PowerPoint slides for business, or writing, marketing, social media, I think AI for content generation is actually the number one use case for AI at the moment.
Kat, if you're an employee and you're working in a business and you start implementing these AI tools, I know a couple of places who would have a problem with that. And there's actually quite a few videos online of HR representatives talking to employees about using AI. What would you recommend you do as the person who is trying to implement it and you're not really doing anything wrong, but your boss hates it?
Yeah, this is such a great question. So we call that shadow IT. The shadow IT is when there is, because in all organizations, there's normally a chief technology officer that has an IT plan and an approval for various
Yeah.
applications that are used. And it's quite a process to get new applications approved. So that's the mainstream, and the CTO and the CEO would love everyone to adhere to that. But actually, what happens in real life, and I think the number is now something like 40% of people are using shadow AI tools. So that means they've got their own chat GPT running in the background, or they've got their own Claude AI, or if they've got their own email system going that nobody knows about. And what is interesting now, there's this whole thing about, oh, I feel shamed, or am I
Yeah.
cheating, or am I doing something illegal? So I would absolutely encourage individuals who want to use AI and know that it helps them with their work to speak to their supervisor about it, to put a case up to whoever is in charge of the technology, and to see if they can get the application approved. Now, if that's not going to work, and it is, and I understand the security risks of people using shadow IT, because you open up potential data breaches, you open up potential content leaks and IP violation, all the things. But there could be still things that, if you're not allowed to use any AI tools at work that you'd like to, I would say absolutely encourage people to use them at home.
Is that an Australian cultural thing that we have where we follow the rules and we do what we're told, and we're, and maybe in the Northern Hemisphere, it just seems a little bit more, normal to be just entrepreneurial, where in Australia there still seems to be the rule followers and the people that kind of really enforce the rules, and you don't go out of those boundaries. Do you see that from working in different markets?
Yeah, I do see that. But Australians, interestingly enough, we're not as innovators as we think, and we're not particularly big risk takers.
And
And
why is that?
look, I think it probably comes down to a cultural thing.
Yeah.
In America, what we know is the way the Americans have come out of various crises, such as the 2008 global financial crisis, is through innovation.
Yeah.
And they have constantly encouraged innovation, teach innovation at school, at universities, and people are encouraged to take risk and innovate. Well, we haven't had quite those crises in Australia, even in these difficult financial situations. We were never actually fully in a recession when we had the GFC, for example. So I think lack of a burning platform for us, which on one hand, Simon, is great because it's not all going to shit, right? But it also, we don't have such a great risk or innovation appetite. And what we do know, what Australia is very good at, on an innovation index, is we've got good researchers. So we come up and we do good research. What we're not good at is implementing research.
Dr. Kat, is having an AI companion dangerous?
One of the things that I talk about a lot in the media is the fact that in the last year, there's been at least 3 young people in the US, Sul Setzer, who is 14, and Adam Rain, who is 16, and Sophie Riley, who is between the age of 14 and 16, who all had AI companions, expressed that they had suicidal thoughts, and the AI encouraged them to go through with their taking their own life.
Oh my God.
And so one of those with Setzer Sul was a company called Character.ai, and the more recent one with Adam Rain is ChatGPT or OpenAI. And both those companies are now being prosecuted. The first time that AI is involved in causing death. So things are changing. So I think these companion AIs can be super useful, and indeed I have several myself. But for young people, I think there needs to be a lot more control and monitoring. And parents and teachers need to be more aware of the relationships that are being forged between young people and their computer companions.
Yeah, wow. I had no idea about those cases. So you said that this is the first time they've got an AI is being taken to court. Is that right? So
The company.
Yeah, wow. Oh my God. I was like, what? How are they going to do that? Imagine. So the people responsible are obviously going to have to show up for that. That's scary.
But think about this too, Simon, Sonia. Imagine if there was any other business in the world where children die as a direct result, they would be shut down. Now, we see the tech giants in front of the Senate. Recently, all the tech giants met with Trump at the White House. Because of the power of the tech giants, they're still tolerated that their technology kills children and they're still able to do what they do.
Yeah.
Is there a need for people to be worried about losing jobs? Do you think that we're going to see lots of jobs disappear, or is that just a bit of the media, hype around AI being here? How do you see it?
Yes, definitely jobs will disappear. I strongly believe that. I know in the AI sector for years we talked about, we're going to augment the technology and we're here to support humans, blah, blah, blah. I think that is true, but also most organizations, as you've seen recently in the news, like CBA released 45 positions because they were bringing on their AI. Then they had to walk that back because their AI was terrible and didn't work. So they had to put people back on. We've seen ANZ announcing job cuts. We've seen Telstra announcing job cuts. So there will be job cuts directly as a result of AI. The World Economic Forum puts it at 85 million jobs, say, in the next 12 months that will be removed because of AI.
Wow.
And 92 million jobs created. Now, those 92 million jobs will be jobs for programmers and data scientists and those in related fields, but won't be the 85 million who are displaced, because these will be more of the frontline workers in jobs such as retail, banking, hospitality, telecom, etc. So it's also the first time, and you hear people like Elon Musk talking about this, that we're considering a universal basic income to come into force at a stage when AI looks like it's displacing a lot of jobs.
What will that look like? What will life look like then? Will we just all go to the beach? What do we do?
Yeah, Simon, this is a great question. And a lot of the AI philosophers, because the coming of these technologies also meant with the rise of the philosophers again in the AI, renaissance, because we have to kind of philosophize about what might happen. And some of the AI philosophers and the luminaries are talking about the fact that it may be a chance for humanity to, if we do it well, have a lot more leisure time given back to us. So let's say, for example, I'm saying at the moment, AI can do 40% of our jobs. Well, what if we then just took that 40% time off? And what the philosophers say is, when this does come, who are you when you're not working? Who do you become? And so some people may be able to do their job and keep their job, but only work a couple of hours a week. What does a society look like when that happens?
Well, it's interesting for someone, I guess, like me. I build a lot of my day around and my purpose around my work, right? So it's not necessarily a money-driven thing. It's I love doing this.
Yeah.
I love having these conversations. I love our business. So if this didn't exist, I'd be worried about, well, what am I filling my day up with? As the way that I'm wired. I'm sure there are other people that would be happy to do lots of chilling out, but I want to be driven. So what happens to those people?
We don't know. And so we also know people that work really hard and go, oh yeah, I can't wait till I'm leisure, I'm going to retire, or I've sell my business. And then after about 3 weeks, they're kind of like,
Bored.
right, okay, now what is there for me? And so this is the question. This is a philosophy question. Who are you when you're not working 40 to 60 hours a week?
Dr. Kat, looking ahead, what do you hope tech will solve for humanity?
Yeah, definitely. I hope and I think it will solve a lot of medical issues. So in disease diagnosis, disease treatment, I'm hoping things like diabetes, Alzheimer's, those classic really difficult diseases will be solved for. We'll see AI also, I think, helping expand people's consciousness, their well-being, longevity. There's an AI going into a lot of that field. AI should be able to be used to help predict things like climate change and help us solve some of those big problems. So I'm a huge fan of what will happen. And I'm a huge fan of transhumanism, which is where technology is finally embedded in our bodies. We have, well, again, it's Elon Musk's company, so I'm not sure how good that is, but Neuralink, which is a brain chip, which we believe within 10 years, brain chips will be standard place. We'll have 1 in 10 cars by 2030 being fully automated, electronic automated vehicles. So I think there's huge advantages coming with AI.
I think I'd be the brain chip guy. Like I think I'd be the guy that would actually put the brain chip in. What about you?
Me
Would you put the brain chip
too.
in?
100%.
Okay,
You know
but-
what I want? This is what I want. Because I'm trying to learn Spanish, right? Because I spend a lot of time in South America. It takes me forever and I'm not great at it. It's like, wouldn't it be good if I just had a chip
Yeah.
Yep.
and I could speak Spanish or could read music, or suddenly I don't need to read all these books that I haven't read and I can just download them.
Yeah.
I think it'll be amazing.
Or just
How about
even
you?
having a conversation with an extremely smart person. If you don't have that intellect, but then you can switch it on and you can have that conversation with them. I think that's amazing. But then there are going to be people naturally that think that that is disgusting and why would we do that? So I see that we're going to have 2 tiers of people, where the people that have the chip and the people that don't have the chip. But what happens to the people without the chip? Because they're going to get absolutely crushed, aren't they?
Well, this is another philosophy question. I'm glad you raised it. So when we look at how species evolve, and Yuval Noah Harari talks a lot about this in his books, species need to bifurcate at some stage. They need to at least split into 2. And what we're posed with humanity now is that some people, like myself, maybe like you, Simon, will go for the digital enhancement and the transhuman path. And then another lot of people, and I live with a lot of them up here, is in the Byron Shire, which is very conscious and nature loving. What I call the organic experiences. So those who will want nothing to do with technology, and they just really want to be in nature and with the earth. And I also deeply respect that. How these 2 get on, and if there's competing for resources, I am personally would be worried about.
Yeah.
So I think what needs to be planned well ahead of time, which is now, is how would we cater for those that want to be highly tech enabled and those who don't, and how do we manage any tension between the groups?
Yeah, wow. Cool. Imagine us all getting a brain chip.
Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of exciting, but it's also very scary because I'm of 2 minds. I don't know if I would want it, but I also feel like I don't want to miss out on something that could enhance my life, right? Like,
I
it's
think
a really interesting
the competitive
debate.
part of me wouldn't want to be left behind.
Totally.
I wouldn't want to be seeing everybody talking this amazing language, and then I'd be there going, what are they all
What's going
talking
on?
about?
Yeah. And I mean, just this week we saw Meta come out with the new glasses. Kat, you should have a look at this, because if you want to learn Spanish, you don't even need to, because it comes up on the screen for you.
That's right.
It'll self-translate. So the tech is getting better and better. Even without having to implement something internally yet. But
that's right. And that's what we'll see. The augmented reality, which is what Meta is presenting, will come and very soon, which the glasses with all of the augmented layer over the physical world. Then virtual reality is fully immersive 3D. It's a bit clunky and heavy still, but that'll smarten up, and we'll have different ways of accessing, other than a brain chip, those intelligences.
So, Dr. Kat, when you're sitting around the dinner table with your kids, what are you telling them? What are you saying to your kids and your stepkids? This is what you should be doing in the future.
Yeah, well, the first thing we talk about is what is needed of them. So what I try and teach my kids. So in my day, we were always taught like, what is my purpose and what is my path and what do I want? And it's my time with Indigenous communities where I've learned that a better question is what is needed of me? What is needed of me? So what I ask my children to consider is rather than them just necessarily pursuing their own interest, is to look at society and look at their community and see what skills are needed of them.
Mm.
And that kind of sets a whole different mindset. My children are a range of different things that they're interested in, but I encourage them all to embrace technology. And then I also encourage them all to spend time in nature.
Mm.
And the other field that I'm very involved with now is as an advocate of the psychedelic renaissance. And so I'm a big proponent that there's a huge role for sacred earth-based medicines that are psychoactive or psychedelic for healing and cleansing and connecting and creating new visions and mission. And so my children are all adults now. We also have open conversations about the role of psychedelics.
As a leader, I know you speak about this in your book, using psychedelics to better become a leader. How can you give us an example of that? How do you utilize it?
Yeah. So what we talk about in the book, and this is my training over many years now, working in the jungles of Peru and the deserts of Mexico, in North America and in Australia with Indigenous communities around these sacred medicines, is that my hypothesis in the book Rapid Transformation is that we don't have time to wait for leaders to take 10 or 15 years to be good leaders and to be experienced. We need good leaders right now.
Mm.
And the book provides a kind of a toolkit and a blueprint for how you use ritual, emerging technology, but also expanded states of consciousness to become a better leader, a transformed leader. And in the altered states of consciousness, what we look at is the value of plant-based and natural occurring medicines. So ayahuasca, bufo, San Pedro, psilocybin, for example, and how these sacraments done with the right set and setting. And of course, in many places, Sonia and Simon, these are illegal. So important to put that caveat in. They're not for everybody. But in the right place, in the right time, with the right guides, these medicines, we call them, can create a peak experience that really fast tracks a leader's development. And that's across 5 key areas. One is healing, so that the leader isn't leading from a place of trauma from their life. 2, cleansing. Many leaders I know, particularly in the tech community and the entrepreneurial community, are addicted to alcohol, cocaine, work, sex, food, lots of things, negativity. So cleansing, connecting, so reconnecting them back to their heart, to nature, to their family, to community, creating a new vision. So how do they think outside the mainstream conditioning that they're in? And then creating a mission. So how are they going to put their new vision in place? And so again, those things, healing, cleansing, connecting, vision, mission, these are all things in my experience and my research that we see that psychedelics can support leaders do in a rapid way.
And how often are you doing that? How often are you going off and having this experience?
So it depends on different people and the levels that they want to work at. So some people might only ever need one experience.
Okay.
So, the profound medicine that you hear people like Mike Tyson talk about, Aubrey Marcus, Tim Ferriss, is bufo alvarius, the 5-MeO-DMT, the God molecule. This is comes from Sonora Desert Toad. In one experience, it's within 10 seconds, complete ego dissolution, and we call it a oneness medicine, that the individual becomes one with all things, become one with consciousness. Goes for about 15 minutes and then they come back. Often very good for recalibrating a person, removing addictions, removing trauma, and creating a new vision for the future. So this could be just a one-off experience. Other people I know who work regularly with these medicines, it might be once every 6 months, once every 12 months, as they're called. And often we have this thing, it's a calling. You sort of called to the medicine. Oh, it feels about time for me to sit again with a sacred medicine and do a ceremony and go through another level of healing. So in the book, again, we provide guidelines and tools to do this in a really supported, safe and responsible way.
My brother actually did an ayahuasca trip.
How did it go?
He did it twice, Kat. So the first time he said it was amazing, but he got very sick, but he still had a very out of body experience. But the second time he did it, it was almost like the first time he'd cleansed his body of really bad like habits and trauma, and he was a heavy drinker and now he doesn't anymore. It really changed him. He's only done it twice, and he was like, he said to me, because I was like, oh, maybe I should do it. And he goes, you'll get the call. You'll know when you want to do it. And I was like, what does that mean? So you've just explained it a hell of a lot better than what he did. Yeah.
I love that. And when he says he got sick, what that actually means is, so the way that the medicine works is it's a purgative. So once you kind of, if he's healing a trauma or an addiction, his body will feel really unwell. And then he'll purge. The ayahuasca is a purgative. So he'll purge. And that purging isn't, oh, I'm sick, like it with a sickness. It's like, oh, I'm getting rid of this addiction or this.
Wow.
This
That's
bad
what he
energy.
said. He said he threw up the devil. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, I saw it come out of my mouth. And I was like, wow.
Right. Yeah. That's full credit, please. Give your brother my absolute respect, for his courage and his bravery. That's exactly right.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Dr. Kat, we like to end each episode with our guests showing us an item that is important to them. Do you have something there that you'd like to show with us or show us today?
Yeah, I do. So this is a little, what we call a feather fan, and it's made from what was, I believe, roadkill blue kingfisher. And so I gifted this to my partner, who is on his early stage kind of shamanic journey with the medicines, and we use feathers like this in ceremony. And so the kingfisher stands for the guardian of the north. Kingfisher, along with hummingbirds, are the keeper of wisdom. And often in psychedelic medicine journeys, you get to see these tiny birds in your journey, and they are the wisdom keepers, and they do intricate healing. So this is like a very sacred feather fan that my partner, uses now as a sort of companion when he goes to do ceremony or do healing.
That's very cool.
Dr. Kat, if someone has made it this far into the episode, they've loved every single word that you've had to say today, is there something that you want to say to that person?
Listen for your calling, not calling to the medicine, but calling, it's your soul wanting to say, hey, I'm here. Because the way we think about it is, there's soul, which is your essence, your life essence, spirit, which is kind of just your energy, your life force, and personality, which is your human self. Now, to be truly happy and truly on your path and understand what is needed of you, it's when your soul is really the one that's running the show. And when we've got trauma and Western conditioning and all the things, often it's hard for soul to be heard. And it's when you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, there's something that's not quite right, and it's kind of soul trying to say, hey, Simon, hey, Sonia, like, time for us to do something different here. So I'd say listen for your calling and trust the calling. And if you're open to it, and again, it doesn't matter if you're a spiritual person or not spiritual person. If you're not spiritual, this is all just your own psyche wanting to do something different. So listen to it. And then I hope in the book that we have made available, and more information can be found at our site, rapid-transformation.com.au. We're also got an online course coming up by the end of the year. We're running retreats. We've got a podcast coming out in just over 9 months. So there'll be a lot more resources there to help people. And I think what I'd love to say is, like, let's try and wake up some leaders. And these leaders are everyday people, because we need you.
Dr. Catriona, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks, Kat.
My absolute pleasure.